Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be myth-busting 7 of the common gardening myths that you should stop believing. And myths can be very misleading in the garden. They can be brought up in new trends, or they can be sort of developed over the years of advice that gardeners have given. They can be tweaked and things like that over the years, and it can really get quite confusing for gardeners new and old. So I'm going to be myth-busting some of the common ones today. So why don't you let me know in the comment section if you've been caught out by any of these myths. And also, whilst you're down there, if you're new to this channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell icon that's next to it to make sure you're notified next time I upload a new video. And I've been caught out by many of these myths myself, and I think it's not really unusual for a gardener to be caught out by these myths or misleading content, because people make it seem really believable, because they could say maybe, oh, my grandfather told me this, or things like that. But really, not all of it is going to be correct. So here are some of the myths that I'm going to bust today to show you what's true and what's not.
Don't do it, don't dig your soil.
What? No, I am going to do it. I know people who've been doing this for years and it hasn't damaged their soil. So you can put your fork back in the shed, because the first myth that I'm going to talk about is that you have to dig your soil. A lot of people say you have to dig your soil, and this topic has a lot of debate in the gardening world. There's a lot of traditional gardeners who say, no, I want to dig my soil, and a lot of them who are sort of following the fairly new method, which isn't new, it's fairly new, method of no-dig gardening, like myself. And personally, I don't have anything against anyone who wants to dig or doesn't want to dig. Obviously, no-dig gardening is where you just put a mulch of composted material on each year, or even more than once a year, just to feed the soil, and let all the insects and worms and microbes do the rest in the soil. Because really, if you think about it, no one has a fork in nature and digs everything up as much as we do. And as you saw in that little clip, the gardening gods were trying to tell me not to dig, and I was still going to do it. So try not to be like me and try and listen to the gardening gods. You don't have to dig your soil. It saves you a lot of effort if you don't want to dig it. And it also, I've found, it has better harvests. But a lot of people obviously have conflicting views. So just do and experiment and do whatever you find works best. I don't have anything against either side, but I personally do no dig. And I think that's a key lesson from gardening, is that you shouldn't listen to anyone's views 100%. You should try and experiment and try different things, because one person's experiences isn't going to work the same in your garden as it did in theirs, because obviously my garden's quite windy, yours may not be, or maybe it's just different things really, different climates, different soils, and it all contributes. So whether you dig on soil or not could be different depending on your soil. It doesn't really matter whether you do either. It all depends on what works for you. Oh, you just caught me watering the leaves of my plants in the day. Most people would be really angry at me for this, because a lot of gardeners think you shouldn't water onto the leaves, especially during the day. And while this is sort of true, it doesn't kill the plants at all. All it really does is it wastes a bit of water, because there's obviously water intercepted on the leaves on the surface that's going to evaporate in the sun. But it's nothing that's going to kill off the plants, really. Let's be honest, these plants are quite big. If I just do that on the leaves, it's the same as if it rained, so it's not going to kill them. It's just going to make you use a bit more water to evaporation. So don't worry about if you have to water in the day. Say you have an allotment and you can only go down there in the daytime. This isn't going to detriment your plants at all if you water them in the daytime, or especially on the leaves. I'd say just do it. If anything bad happens, then you can change it. But especially to established plants like these, nothing's going to happen. If they're seedlings, they may have a bit of an effect, but to be honest, it's not really going to kill them off. So if you're a beginner and you have to water in the daytime or onto the leaves, then just do it. It's not going to kill off your plants when they're big and healthy like this. They're more likely to die if you don't water them. And let's be honest, in natural circumstances, the rain is going to come and fall on their leaves, so it's not going to make much difference. Obviously, again, if it does kill off a plant, then make sure you just do whatever works for you. So just figure out what went wrong and then learn from that and try again next time. And the next one is actually nothing really to do with the act of gardening itself, but it's to do with the stereotypes around gardening. And it's actually the myth that a lot of people believe, especially younger people, believe that gardening's for older people or for people who are retired, maybe who've got more time on their hands. And this is completely not true. And I do think this stereotype has sort of changed a bit over lockdown, because a lot of younger people have been taking up gardening, which is great news. But that's one of the reasons I've got this channel here and this following that I'm trying to grow on social media. I'm trying to make the stereotype of gardeners become more trendy and more young, to get more people growing their own food and getting outdoors in nature, because being cooped up inside on our screens, even though you're on a screen watching this right now, being cooped up on your screen inside isn't good for anybody all the time. A little bit, obviously in moderation, it can be alright, you can enjoy it, and I do enjoy going and scrolling on social media sometimes, but it's also really good to get outside and have some fresh air. So this is one of the reasons I've got my channel. So if you subscribe, you're already supporting this movement to try and inspire more young people to start and take up gardening. The next myth is actually that vegetables and flowers have to be grown separately. So you may hear a lot of people saying that they've got their flower borders and their vegetable patch, and this sort of normalises having vegetables growing and flowers growing separately. But actually growing them together can be beneficial to your crops and to your flowers, because if you have flowers that are great for pollinators, such as native flowers like cosmos and things like that, near to your vegetables, then that can mean that the bees will be brought into that area and they can pollinate your food crops. So for example, you'll get a better runner bean crop maybe. And it's all about trying to get the balance right of flowers and vegetables so that they can attract things that are beneficial to each other into an area, so that they're sort of in a symbiotic relationship where they're helping each other out. One's giving another thing, and they're just all giving each other different things. And a lot of vegetables, like runner beans, are part of the legumes, where they've got root nodules that have nitrogen-fixing bacteria in them that turn the nitrogen in the air into usable nitrates for plants. So that means whenever a bit of root sort of breaks off that has one of these nodules on it, then there's a lot of nitrates there, which means that when that breaks down, it can actually help the plants around it that have got roots near there, meaning you get better vegetable crops and flower crops. So this is why you should really look into growing flowers and vegetables together. This is something I'm still trying to dabble with. I haven't really done it fully, but I really would like to try and do that a bit more. Another myth is that gardening is old-fashioned, and while gardening and domesticating plants goes back thousands of years in human history, gardening is also sometimes perceived, similarly to how it's perceived as that older people will only garden, it's also perceived as old-fashioned sometimes. And this harvester is basically living, breathing proof that gardening is moving forward, and there's a lot of a future in gardening with technology and things like that. This is a fully automated greenhouse. It waters itself, it ventilates itself with the roof, it catches its own water, it pumps its own water out to water everything, it tells me on my phone what temperature and everything it is. It really is the future of gardening, really, I think, automation. And as you can see in here, I've recently fitted drip wires, which are basically just a pipe that takes the water directly down to the base of my big plants, like my tomatoes, so that the sprayers don't encourage any blight and damp in the air. And it also means all the water goes straight to the base, so there's nothing wasted. But other than this, gardening even has its own social media now. There's an app called Candid, that's Candide, that is a gardener's social media, which I've tried to get on there, but I always forget to post on my account on there. But if you want to follow me, then I am on there. I'm known as the Welsh Gardener, which is my username, so make sure you check me out if you're on there. But I find that that is a really good way to find like-minded people. And another good way of finding like-minded people using technology is Instagram. If you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I've actually got a following on Instagram as well. So if you check over there, my link to my Instagram is down in the description. It's really a good community, gardening community on Instagram. I found that everyone's really friendly to each other, everyone helps each other out a bit, and there really is loads of gardening accounts. There's been absolutely loads more just started up since lockdown, and there's a lot of younger families starting to dabble with gardening, which is a really great sign for gardening. But anyway, yeah, I think gardening online and with this harvester really proves my point that gardening isn't old-fashioned. Another very common myth, which I see a lot, is that people think to grow their own food they have to have loads of space. And yes, this may be true if you want to be self-sufficient, but a space like mine, my garden's not huge, and especially this part of my vegetable patch isn't huge, but just look at how much plants I can fit in here. I've had some lettuce and spinach there that's now gone to seed. If you had low space, you probably would have taken those flowering plants out to utilise the space and plonk something else in there to grow, but I've been trying to start saving seeds more, so I've left them there. Then I've got a huge patch of parsnips. I've even got a pear tree in here, albeit it hasn't got any pears on it, but nevertheless there is a pear tree there. Then I've got a wigwam of runner beans, mange too, lettuce, carrots, and the carrots I've been growing have been doing really well this year. Then I've got some dwarf beans, more carrots, onions, and then if you don't even have any ground space in your garden or your outdoor space, you could even have containers on your patio, so just grow sacks and things like that, like what I've got my courgettes growing in, that I picked my first courgette of the year today. So you really don't need loads of space, and I hope that this garden, because I've not got a huge garden, a lot of the gardening YouTubers have huge gardens or allotments. I don't have a huge amount of space to grow my own food, and I really hope that this can inspire some people with smaller spaces like this to start thinking about whether they can grow some of their own food. And we've been starting to have homegrown food in almost every meal that we have now, because just mainly from this space, because the rest of my garden isn't doing amazingly this year. This is the main growing space this season. So yeah, this space can easily get you some homegrown food on your plate every evening. And don't forget that I live in a family. If you were living by yourself, or maybe there's two of you, this could easily get you loads of food. Maybe not self-sufficiency, but you could easily get plenty of food out of this. And last but not least, the last myth that I'm going to bust today is that you think gardening has to be expensive. And upcycling, reusing things is a really big part of my garden. For example, the greenhouse behind me here was made for £20. Maybe it's gone up a bit in value now because I've put some old windows on it, but they didn't cost me anything. And also, things can be free as well to look pretty in your garden. For example, this wild bank here, I've just let it grow out and all the wildflowers have come, so it looks really nice. And also there's a trough that I grow herbs in that we turned an old school desk in with pallet wood into a trough to grow herbs. So there's really loads of possibilities like this. And this greenhouse behind me here is the one that cost me £20. It's got upcycled fence posts, glass, even table legs have been reused to be the handles. And the only thing I really bought was screws, hinges, and this sort of plastic polythene on the ends. And really, you know, like my technologically advanced harvester, you can have something like that. But if you don't want to invest in something like that straight away, or you don't have the budget for that, something like this is more than achievable. With a relatively low level of DIY skill, you can easily make something like this. And you don't really need many tools either. You could even do it without power tools. Might take a bit longer, but you can easily do it. I mean, we only really used a cordless drill on this. We wouldn't have used anything else. Maybe a powered router, but you could even go without that if you wanted to. Maybe just tweak the design a little bit. But I'm actually going to be making another tour of this greenhouse on how I made it in a future video coming up soon, because the last time I did it, the video quality I wasn't really happy with because I filmed it on my old phone because my camera had broken, my old one. And also, I just think I could do a better job of it now. So, make sure you look out soon for a video all about how I made this greenhouse and how much it cost me, coming up soon on my channel, as I said. And it'll also be made a lot better than my last one. And I will probably do a bit more in depth on how I actually made it and some of the processes we used and the ways we, like for example, kept the glass in the opening doors and things like that. So there we are, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you actually learnt something from this video, so you learnt what myths not to believe anymore. If you did enjoy and you found this video useful, then please make sure you like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel down below, because it really means a lot and it helps to spread the word of gardening, as I said earlier, to more of a wider audience, to get more people growing their own food, especially young people. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.